Welcome to Claims and Sustains, a Seyfarth government contracts blog. I'm Zohra Tejani. In this episode, I kick off our CMMC series. I will start off our CMMC series by actually taking a step back and explaining the underpinning of CMMC. The context will help frame the CMMC requirements that you'll hear about in future episodes of this series. I also think that this foundational discussion is important for a general understanding and for developing an appropriate compliance posture. Also, understanding the underpinning of CMMC can help avoid internal confusion and help manage outside consultants. I'm a visual learner, so to help explain the context for CMMC, I've prepared a very basic visual aid. Let's start from the bottom and work our way up to the top where we'll discuss CMMC, or at least introduce that topic. First of all, what is controlled unclassified information, or CUI? CUI is a type of information that the government is required to protect, but it is not classified information. CUI includes things like legal documents, financial data, technical plans that could have a negative impact if broadly shared, or if it were to fall into the wrong hands. So while this kind of information might not require the highest level of security, there is still a need to restrict access and manage how it should be handled. One point that not everyone realizes is that the requirements to protect information that is identified as CUI come from a variety of sources of law, regulations, or policy. One example is health information. At a high level, health information is information created or received by a healthcare provider and others and relates to the physical or mental health or conditions of an individual. The full definition is much more detailed and is set forth in the U.S. Code. Another example is in the defense category and is called controlled technical information. One aspect of that definition stems from technical data or computer software, which are defined in the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement in Clause 252-227-7013, which is the rights and technical data for non-commercial items. Examples of technical information include research and engineering data, engineering drawings, technical reports, data sets, studies and analyses, and computer software executable code and source code. And there are more examples as well. Now let's move up the graphic to safeguarding CUI. In this section, we're focusing not on the various legal frameworks that identify and govern sensitive information. We're now noting the requirements to implement controls to safeguard CUI in non-federal systems. A prominent example is the requirement to safeguard covered defense information for certain contracts and subcontracts with the U.S. Department of War based on DFARS 252-204-7012. This clause requires contractors and subcontractors to implement that 110 cybersecurity controls in NIST SP 800-171 and to report certain cyber incidents. This is not a new requirement, and many companies who actively do business with defense agencies or who are in that supply chain have already implemented these controls. Now, finally, let's talk about how this connects to CMMC. CMMC is the U.S. Department of War program for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. You'll hear much more about CMMC in the next episodes in this series. For now, I'll just point out that CMMC Level 1 and Level 2 do not reflect new control sets that companies need to implement. In other words, generally speaking, the CMMC program is a way for defense agency customers to ensure that companies have implemented the required controls before contract award. For example, CMMC Level 2 maps to the 110 controls of NIST SP 800-171. So CMMC Level 2 is about certifying prior to award that the controls of NIST SP 800-171 have been implemented. To recap, CUI refers to the different types of information that are required to be safeguarded based on various sources of law, regulation, and policy. Then, safeguarding CUI relates to the requirement to implement controls over that CUI, such as the controls of NIST SP 800-171. Finally, CMMC is a certification program to ensure that the controls to safeguard CUI have been implemented before contract award. Of course, this is an oversimplified treatment of this topic, but hopefully this overview provides a helpful framework to think about it. A downloadable version of this visual aid is posted on the Claims and Sustains blog website. You can also find our infographic on government contracts for technology and innovation to see how this topic fits into the world of risk and revenue for your government business. Thank you, and that's it for today's episode. You can subscribe to the Claims and Sustains blog so you can receive the rest of the CMMC series and all future episodes of the Seyfarth Government Contracts Practice. Thank you.